36 cuts. That's how many times Bumpy Johnson's blade found flesh in 4 minutes. By cut 12, Ulissiz Rollins was already finished. By cut 24, he'd lost his left eye. By cut 36, 200 witnesses were too terrified to breathe. Then, Bumpy did something nobody expected. He straightened his tie, stepped over the body, and ordered spaghetti. This wasn't just violence. This was a message carved into a man's face, and everyone in Harlem got it. The Alhambra restaurant, Harlem. Friday night, 1935, 8:47 p.m. The jazz quartet was playing something low and smooth, Duke Ellington style. 200 people packed the room. Hustlers, musicians, intellectuals. Everyone who mattered in Harlem came to the Alhambra on Friday nights. Bumpy Johnson sat at table 7, charcoal suit, burgundy tie, fedora at a precise angle. He looked like a banker having dinner with a beautiful woman. Helen Lawson, white, Vassar educated, senior editor at Vanity Fair. She'd been asking him about Charleston, about growing up black in the South. He'd been asking her about working in a world where she was one of 3 women. The conversation flowed. The drinks were cold. The atmosphere was perfect. Then the door opened. Ulissiz Rollins walked in, 6'2", 240 pounds of Chicago muscle and scar tissue. They called him the Bull. 11 men dead before his 25th birthday. Dutch Schultz had paid him $5,000 up front, $10,000 more when Bumpy Johnson stopped breathing. "Make it loud," Schultz had said. "Make it public." Rollins made his way through the tables, slow, deliberate, shoulders back like a predator, eyes scanning. Everyone could see him coming. That was the point. When he reached table 7, he stopped, standing over Bumpy's chair, the power dynamic clear. Or so he thought. "You Bumpy Johnson?" "Depends who's asking." "Dutch Schultz sends his regards, says you've been a problem." The jazz kept playing, but conversations around them died. People sensed it, something about to break. "Tell Dutch," Bumpy said calmly, "that Harlem already solved its problem with him." Rollins laughed. Big words for a man sitting down. That's when Bumpy saw it, Rollins's hand drifting toward his jacket, toward the .45 in his shoulder holster, and Bumpy made a decision. If Rollins drew that gun, people would die. Helen, the musicians, the waiters, bullets don't care who they hit in a crowded room. So Bumpy moved first. It happened so fast most people only saw the end. Bumpy's hand shot to the table, grabbed the steak knife beside his plate, 6 inches, serrated edge, sharp enough to cut bone. Rollins saw the movement. His hand went for the gun, but Bumpy was already in motion. He exploded up from the chair. The chair fell backward. Helen gasped, and Bumpy drove forward. The first cut caught Rollins across the forearm as he drew. The pistol clattered to the floor. The second cut opened his cheek. By the third, Rollins understood. He wasn't fighting a man. He was fighting something that moved like water and struck like lightning. They crashed into a nearby table. Glasses shattered. Food flew. People screamed. But Bumpy didn't stop. This was mathematics. Every cut precise, calculated, not rage, strategy. Cut 4 opened the ribs, cut 5 the shoulder, cut 6 the throat. Not deep enough to kill, deep enough to remind. Rollins tried to fight back. He was bigger, stronger. None of it mattered. Every time Rollins swung, Bumpy slipped the punch, and the knife found flesh. By cut 12, Rollins dropped to his knees. The entire restaurant had gone silent. Even the jazz quartet stopped playing. 200 people frozen, watching something out of a nightmare. But Bumpy wasn't finished. This wasn't about killing Rollins. Any thug could kill. This was about sending a message so clear, so final, that nobody would ever need to receive it again. Cut 13, 14, 15. The blade kept moving, methodical, every witness watching, every witness remembering. Rollins tried to cover his face. His hands came up weak, shaking. That's when Bumpy went for the eye. Cut 25 caught Rollins above the left socket. The blade went deep, twisted. When Bumpy pulled back, Rollins's eyeball came with it, the damage permanent, irreversible. Rollins screamed, a sound Helen Lawson would hear in nightmares for years. The blood was everywhere now, on Bumpy's hands, his suit, the floor, the tables. Rollins collapsed completely, face down, whimpering, broken. Bumpy stood up. And then he did something that made the temperature in that room drop 20 degrees. He reached down, straightened his tie. The gesture so calm, so deliberate, it sent ice through every person watching. This man had just destroyed another human being, and he was adjusting his wardrobe like he'd finished a business meeting. Then Bumpy stepped over Rollins's body. Not around it, over it. Like Rollins was a puddle in his path. He walked back to table 7, picked up his fallen chair, set it upright, sat down. Helen was standing against the wall with other terrified patrons, staring, unable to look away. Bumpy looked at her, smiled, the same charming smile he'd given her when she arrived. "I apologize for the interruption." His voice was perfectly calm, like nothing had happened. Then he looked around for the waiter. The young man was pressed against the bar, white-faced, trembling. "Excuse me," Bumpy called out. "Could I see a menu? I seem to have worked up an appetite." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Bumpy picked up a menu from a nearby table, studied it, then looked up. "You know what? I suddenly have a taste for spaghetti and meatballs." The waiter, hands shaking, took the order. 8 minutes later, the spaghetti arrived, steam rising, red sauce almost black in the dim light. Through the windows, an ambulance pulled up. Medics rushed in to collect Ulissiz Rollins, still breathing, barely conscious, his left eye gone forever, and Bumpy Johnson picked up his fork. He twirled the pasta, took a bite, not quickly like someone proving a point, slowly, casually, like he was genuinely enjoying it. Helen couldn't move, couldn't speak. She watched this man eat, the same man who'd been discussing Langston Hughes 5 minutes earlier, the same man who'd just methodically destroyed someone twice his size. "It's good," Bumpy said, glancing at her. "You should eat something." He took 3 more bites, each one deliberate, each one a statement. By the time police arrived, Bumpy had finished half the plate. The cops knew better than to arrest Bumpy Johnson. Half were on his payroll. The other half knew that in Harlem, Bumpy was the law. "Self-defense," one officer wrote. "Victim drew weapon first, multiple witnesses confirm." But to understand why this moment mattered, you need to understand what brought these 2 men to that restaurant. 3 months earlier. Summer 1935. Harlem was at war. Dutch Schultz, the German Jewish mobster who controlled half of New York, wanted Harlem's numbers racket. The illegal lottery made millions every week, and Schultz intended to take it, all of it. He'd already sent dozens of men into Harlem. They burned businesses, beat numbers runners, collected protection money at gunpoint. But there was a problem. His name was Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy worked for Madame Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen who'd built an empire from nothing, and Bumpy had made her a promise. Harlem stays black, no matter what. Bumpy and his crew had been picking off Schultz's men one by one. It was easy. Few white men walked around Harlem during the day. They stood out. And Bumpy's network saw everything. The shoeshine boys, the newspaper vendors, the women selling flowers. They all worked for Bumpy. Schultz was getting desperate. He needed someone who could handle Bumpy, someone who wasn't afraid. That's when he called Chicago. Ulissiz Rollins, the Bull, 5,000 up front, 10,000 when the job was done. "Make it public," Schultz told him. "I want every numbers runner in Harlem to know what happens when they resist." But Rollins didn't understand Harlem, didn't understand that the streets had eyes. By the time he'd been in town 3 days, Bumpy knew everything. What hotel, what he ate for breakfast, what weapons he carried. Bumpy also knew Rollins was watching him. So when Helen Lawson asked him to dinner, Bumpy suggested the Alhambra. Best jazz in Harlem, always crowded on Friday nights, plenty of witnesses. Because Bumpy understood something Rollins didn't. If violence was coming, better to control when and where. Better to choose your battlefield. And better to make sure everyone saw what happened next. After the police left, Helen asked Bumpy to walk her home. She couldn't stay in that restaurant another moment. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Bumpy said as they stepped into the Harlem night. Helen was quiet. Then, "That man came to kill you." "Yes." "And you knew he would?" "Yes." "So the whole dinner was what? A trap?" Bumpy stopped walking, looked at her with something that might have been sadness. I didn't set a trap. I just lived my life. But when a man comes to kill you in front of innocent people, you handle it fast. And you handle it final. So everyone knows what happens next time. Helen would quit Vanity Fair 3 weeks later. A reporter asked her why years afterward. Because, she said, I'd been writing about Harlem like it was fascinating, exotic, safe behind glass. That night, I learned the glass was an illusion. The most dangerous man in Harlem was also the most civilized. That's what terrified me, not the violence, the control. By Saturday morning, the story had spread through Harlem like wildfire. Not just the fight, the spaghetti. That detail became legend. That's how Bumpy Johnson handles business, cool as ice, even with blood on his hands. The story reached Dutch Schultz by noon. He was in his Bronx office when his lieutenant came in. "Boss, Rollins is in the hospital. Bumpy cut him to pieces, took his eye." Schultz put down his cigar, walked to the window. Below, the Harlem River. Across it, Bumpy's kingdom. "You know what the problem is?" Schultz's voice was quiet. "We keep thinking violence wins. But Bumpy just showed us something. Violence is easy. Any animal can kill. Control is power, and we can't control what we don't understand." He turned to his lieutenant. "Call Lucky Luciano. Tell him we need a meeting. Tell him we need to make a deal with Bumpy Johnson." The lieutenant stared. "Boss, we've lost 40 men trying to take Harlem. We can send 100 more. And Bumpy will kill them, one by one, in public, while eating dinner." Schultz shook his head. "Harlem isn't for sale, and I'm done bleeding money trying to buy it." 6 months later, Dutch Schultz would be dead, shot on orders from Lucky Luciano, and Bumpy would negotiate the deal that made him Harlem's godfather. The first black man to sit at the table as an equal with the Italian mafia. But that Friday night in 1935, Bumpy was just a man having dinner. A man who ordered spaghetti while another man's blood was still wet on the floor. The story of the 36 cuts became legend. But most people missed the point. Bumpy didn't just destroy Ulissiz Rollins that night. He destroyed the idea that Harlem could be conquered by outside forces. Every mobster in New York heard that story. Every politician, every cop. And they all understood the same message. Harlem protects its own. Bumpy Johnson would rule Harlem for the next 30 years. He'd go to prison twice, serve time in Alcatraz, negotiate with the mafia, protect Malcolm X, become a legend. But on that summer night at the Alhambra, with 200 witnesses watching him step over a bleeding man and order pasta, Bumpy Johnson taught everyone a lesson about power. Real power isn't violence. Any thug can kill. Real power is control, precision, the ability to destroy a man and then calmly straighten your tie. It's sending a message so clear, so final, that you never have to send it again. Years later, an old man who'd been at the restaurant was asked what he remembered most. He thought for a long time. "The spaghetti," he said. "This man just took another man's eye out. And he sat there eating pasta like it was Sunday dinner, not pretending, actually eating it, actually enjoying it." He shook his head. "That's when I knew. That's when we all knew. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just dangerous. He was something colder, something you don't forget." That's the truth about legends. They're not born in the big moments. They're born in the small ones, in the details, in the way a man adjusts his tie, in the way he steps over a body, in the way he orders spaghetti, 36 cuts, one message, one legend. That's the night Harlem learned who Bumpy Johnson really was. Drop a comment. Would you have the nerve to order spaghetti after what Bumpy just did? And if you want more stories about the man who made the mob bow to Harlem, you know what to do.